If the town store was pricey, the catalog set the price. Here are 10 forgotten mail-order money savers from Sears and Montgomery Ward. They slashed costs, pressured greedy shopkeepers, and changed how America shopped. The last one changed America forever. 10. Catalog price checks kept local stores honest. In small towns of the 1920s and 30s, local shopkeepers often controlled the only dry goods, tools, or clothing store within miles. Without competition, prices ran high, sometimes 20 to 30% above what goods sold for in nearby cities. That's where the Sears or Montgomery Ward catalog came in. Families kept these hefty wish books on kitchen tables, not just for shopping, but as a price weapon. If a store charged $1.25 for overalls, but the Sears catalog listed them for 98 cents, customers pushed back. Many merchants reluctantly matched or lowered prices to avoid losing business. This practice worked because catalogs were widely distributed. Over 3 million copies of the Sears catalog were printed annually by the 1920s. Even farmers without telephones or cars suddenly had access to big city pricing power. Some historians argue that catalogs democratized pricing, ending decades of small-town monopolies. Families didn't even have to order. The simple knowledge of catalog prices disciplined local markets. Today, Amazon plays the same role. Shoppers walk into stores, scan a barcode, and demand price matches. But long before smartphones, the dog-eared Sears book was the equalizer. It kept shopkeepers honest, put bargaining power into the hands of working families, and reshaped small-town retail culture forever. 9. Group orders cut freight costs down to pennies. Freight was often the hidden killer of mail-order deals. A plow might cost $12 in the Sears catalog, but shipping it individually to a rural depot could add another $3 or $4, nearly a week's wages for many families. The solution? Neighbors banded together. Farmers pooled orders for tools, seed, fabric, and even stoves, shipping them in a single crate or wagon load. Suddenly, that $4 shipping fee divided among 5 families dropped to less than $1 each. Montgomery Ward actively encouraged this practice. Their catalogs even suggested forming buying clubs, especially in towns far from rail hubs. Historical records show that in some farming regions, over half of mail-order purchases in the 1930s were grouped shipments. The benefits went beyond money. Waiting together at the depot, families built networks of trust and swapped goods if someone overordered. One farmer might take 3 extra rakes, while another traded bolts of cloth. This cooperative model mirrored what later became warehouse clubs like Costco or Sam's Club, but with a Depression-era twist. It wasn't about stockpiling luxuries, it was about survival. By cutting freight costs to pennies, group orders made catalogs practical, even for the poorest families, proving again that solidarity often stretched dollars further than solo effort ever could. 8. Factory seconds delivered quality at half the price. Factories in the 1920s and 30s churned out millions of shirts, shoes, and tools. Not every item passed inspection. A shoe might have a crooked stitch, or a hammer handle a blemish. These seconds weren't junk. They worked perfectly, but traditional retailers often refused to stock them. Sears and Montgomery Ward saw opportunity. They bought factory seconds by the wagon load, sold them at 30 to 50% discounts, and labeled them honestly in their catalogs. For families scraping by on $20 a week, these deals were lifesavers. A man could buy work boots for $1 $2.49 instead of $2.95, or a set of plates for 40 cents instead of 75 cents. By the mid-1930s, catalogs devoted entire sections to seconds. Sears even guaranteed the function of the product despite cosmetic flaws. This direct access bypassed middlemen and kept factories moving goods that would otherwise sit idle. The practice quietly shaped consumer expectations. People learned that tiny imperfections weren't worth full price. Local shopkeepers fumed, unable to match the deals. One Illinois merchant in 1932 complained, "They sell the blemish for less than I buy the perfect." Today, outlet malls and discount chains follow the same model. But in the 1930s, factory seconds delivered dignity, putting solid shoes on feet and sturdy tools in hands for half the cost. 7. Postal money orders made mail shopping safe for everyone. Trust was the biggest barrier to early mail order. Families feared sending hard cash through the mail. It could be lost, stolen, or simply never reach Chicago. Checks weren't common in rural America, and most banks wouldn't honor small-town paper anyway. The U.S. Post Office solved this in 1864 with the invention of the postal money order, and by the 1920s, it was the lifeline of catalog shopping. For a small fee, customers could buy a money order at their local post office, payable only to Sears, Montgomery Ward, or another merchant. It was as good as cash but carried government backing. In 1930 alone, the post office issued over 230 million money orders, many destined for catalog houses. Farmers mailed orders for plows, mothers for school clothes, and teenagers for guitars, all with peace of mind. This system democratized shopping. Even families without bank accounts suddenly had a safe way to participate in the national economy. Catalog companies advertised money orders as proof they could be trusted. Local stores hated it since they thrived on credit tabs, and IOUS postal money orders undercut that grip. Today's equivalent is PayPal or Venmo, instant, secure, government-recognized transactions. But back then, a humble green slip of paper made national mail-order trade possible, turning isolated households into confident cash customers. 6. COD, cash on delivery. Stopped scams, cold fraud, was a real fear in the early days of catalog shopping. Families worried, what if I mail the money and never get the goods? Sears and Montgomery Ward tackled this head-on with COD, cash on delivery. You didn't pay a dime until the parcel was in your hands. The postman or express agent collected the payment, then released the box. It was foolproof protection in an era without credit cards or consumer watchdogs. By the 1920s, thousands of families relied on COD for bigger ticket items like sewing machines, stoves, and even farm equipment because the sums involved were equal to weeks or months of wages. Historical postal reports show that by 1935, over 15% of Sears orders were shipped COD, reassuring customers who had been burned by fly-by-night catalog outfits. It wasn't just about trust. It also forced discipline. A farmer couldn't overspend money he didn't yet have. He had to show up at the depot with cash in hand. Local merchants hated it because it stripped them of their biggest weapon, credit tabs that trapped families in debt. Today's cash on delivery still exists in parts of Asia and Africa where digital banking is scarce. Back in Depression-era America, it was a game changer, proving that catalog shopping could be as secure as buying from Main Street. 5. Return guarantees forced fair treatment from retailers. For decades, small-town stores ruled by the phrase, "all sales final." If boots pinched or fabric tore after a week, too bad, you were stuck. Sears and Montgomery Ward shattered that system with bold promises. Satisfaction guaranteed, or your money back. Customers could return goods by post for a full refund, something unheard of in most local shops. This policy wasn't just advertising fluff. It was heavily used. By the 1930s, Sears processed tens of thousands of returns annually, from mismatched shoes to faulty churns. Families suddenly had leverage. If a stove smoked or a plow broke, they weren't trapped. That confidence fueled more mail order sales. Local shopkeepers hated the comparison. Some began reluctantly offering store credit or partial refunds, trying to mimic the catalogs. But few could match the scale. Sears had warehouses and systems to absorb the costs, while small-town shops lived invoice to invoice. The return guarantee also reshaped consumer expectations. Americans learned that buying wasn't a gamble. It came with rights. The ripple effect is still with us. From Costco's generous return desk to Amazon's one-click refunds. But in the 1930s, it was radical. A housewife in Kansas could order with courage, knowing her hard-earned $2.98 wasn't locked into disappointment forever. 4. Kit bargains put houses, barns, and furniture within reach. One of the boldest catalog money savers was the kit. Sears sold everything from dining tables to entire houses in flat-packed bundles. Between 1908 and 1940, Sears shipped more than 70,000 mail-order homes, complete with pre-cut lumber, nails, doors, and blueprints. For as little as $1,500, a family could build a 2-story craftsman-style house, less than half what a contractor would charge locally. Furniture kits were just as popular. A full parlor set, sofa, rocker, and chairs might cost $39.95 in the catalog, compared to $70 to $80 at a town furniture store. Barn kits, chicken coops, and even garages arrived on boxcars. Neighbors often gathered for barn raisings, turning kit deliveries into community events. The freight cost was steep, but pooling resources or picking up at the rail depot cut expenses drastically. The savings didn't come only from bulk buying. Factories pre-measured and machine-cut the lumber, slashing construction waste and labor time. Sears bragged that even families with little building experience could erect a house in under 90 days. Local carpenters called it unfair competition. But for Depression-era families, kit bargains were lifelines. They turned catalog pages into front porches, proving that with smart design and national shipping, even home ownership could be democratized on a shoestring. 3. Seasonal catalogs doubled as budgeting and planning tools. Catalogs weren't just shopping lists, they were financial roadmaps. Sears and Montgomery Ward sent out seasonal catalogs twice a year, spring, summer, and fall or winter, each running 400 to 1,000 pages thick. Families pored over them like ledgers, circling items months before purchase, penciling notes beside prices, and building savings plans around upcoming needs. A boy's school suit for $2.95 might be flagged in June, with nickels set aside each week until fall. Historians note that many households treated catalogs as informal budgeting guides, teaching children arithmetic through price comparisons. A farm family might calculate how many eggs or bushels of corn needed selling to afford a new sewing machine. The Sears 1933 catalog even offered installment charts, showing how a purchase could be spread over weeks, an early nod to consumer credit, though most still paid cash. The catalog also provided price stability. In rural areas where stores could inflate costs on a whim, the printed catalog locked prices for the season. Families could budget with certainty, knowing a stove would still cost $9.95 when the harvest check came in. In effect, the catalog was part wish book, part savings planner, and part financial teacher. It turned rural kitchen tables into mini boardrooms where families strategized survival one penciled figure at a time. 2. Rural free delivery turned isolated farms into savvy shoppers. Before the 1890s, farmers often had to ride half a day just to reach the nearest post office or general store. Mail order sounded good, but the cost of sending and receiving packages could wipe out the savings. That changed with Rural Free Delivery, RFD, introduced nationwide in 1902. Suddenly, the postman brought letters, catalogs, and even parcels directly to farm mailboxes, no matter how remote. The impact was massive. By 1910, over 40,000 RFD routes served nearly 10 million rural Americans. Farmers who once relied on a single overpriced store now flipped through catalogs, offering thousands of goods. A harness in the local shop might cost $12, while the Sears catalog listed it at $7.95. And with RFD, it arrived at your door. Montgomery Ward credited RFD with doubling their rural business within a decade. The service also made payment easier. Postal money orders and later COD fit seamlessly into the system. Even the smallest farmsteads became participants in the national market, narrowing the cultural and economic gap between city and countryside. Local merchants fumed, calling RFD the death knell of the corner store. But for isolated families, it was liberation. RFD turned lonely farmhouses into savvy shopping hubs where catalogs dictated choices instead of local monopolies. 1. Mail order competition reshaped America's entire retail economy. The mail order giants didn't just save families pennies, they rewired the entire economy. Sears, Roebuck and Company, and Montgomery Ward were two of the largest employers in the U.S. by the 1920s, operating warehouses that sprawled across multiple city blocks in Chicago. Their catalogs reached more than 20 million households annually, making them the first real national retailers. The numbers are staggering. By 1929, Sears' annual sales topped $400 million, rivaling Ford Motor Company. Their low prices forced local merchants to adapt or die. Dry goods stores slashed margins. Hardware shops scrambled to match catalog deals, and many small-town merchants turned into pickup agents for catalog orders just to keep customers walking through their doors. Mail order also accelerated infrastructure growth. The U.S. Post Office expanded parcel post service in 1913, largely because of Sears and Ward's demand. Railroads profited from shipping millions of tons of catalog goods, while factories scaled up production to meet the steady demand fueled by mail order. By the Depression, catalog houses were lifelines for struggling families, offering cheap clothing, farm tools, and even entire houses at fair prices. Mail order didn't just sell goods. It democratized access, broke local monopolies, and pushed America toward a modern consumer economy. The ripple effects still shape retail today. Thanks for watching. If you loved uncovering these forgotten catalog money tricks, check out our other videos for more hidden history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next scandalous story from the past.